point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 532nd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the astonishing Tom Fennell.
532nd? That means 10 years, doesn't it?
Well, it does, except we had specials in there. We will be 10 years in the beginning of November, actually.
Okay.
We had about 50 specials, something like that. So, yeah, we're getting there. Okay, and what I should tell everybody is that this show is made up of news articles, usually 21 of them, 3 per day, that are taken from my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go there and click on the calendar to find the day that the article appeared. It will be one of about 10 to 15 on any given day, but usually 15. Or you can go to a link that is below if you're watching this on a computer, on the internet. You can go to, also below is listed a website that Tom and I use for setting the show up. And you can, those sites all have links to the original articles, so you can go and read the original article. Check us.
Yeah, most of these links work, and if you got time, some of these articles are very good, well written, very interesting.
Absolutely.
Long.
Okay, we are starting. Today is the 20th of July, and the days that we're covering are the Thursday, the 13th of July to Wednesday, the 19th of July. We're starting on the 13th with
That's when the week started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're starting with a story about coral. And
a picture of coral.
And a picture of coral. Yeah, Nolan is sneaking around the studio here, adjusting things as we talk. So, anyway.
This comes from CNN.
Yes, it does.
And it says, and I quote, "Ocean heat around Florida is unprecedented, and scientists are warning of major impacts."
Yeah, this was something I found just astonishing. I wasn't prepared for this. Actually, there are a bunch of things that I was not prepared for that happened this week. A sudden marine heat wave off the coast of Florida has surprised scientists and sent water temperatures soaring to unprecedented highs, threatening one of the most severe coral bleaching events the state has ever seen. The ocean is close to 97 degrees in some areas.
Now, that's pretty damn hot, let me tell you.
It's hot enough to make you sweat while you're swimming. I mean, you know, this is hot enough that if you were in a boat out at sea, you would necessarily feel hot.
So you dive into the water and you get hotter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's crazy. And what can survive at 97 degrees? I don't know. I know that I know that there are a lot of fish that will die if the temperature gets to 90 or 85, or in some cases even 80. Brook trout in Vermont will not survive at 80 degrees. Brown trout, same thing. So this is not good news.
Not at all.
Okay, our next item comes from CNN, and I chose this picture to go up with this because I'm really not familiar with the mountains of this part of the world, and I figured that a lot of other people would not either. This is from Romania.
I know almost nothing about Romania.
Well, I know something about the history of Romania, including why it's called Romania.
Uh-huh.
My brother used to
It was
live in
Romans, doesn't it?
yeah. My brother used to live in Liberia, and he said in Liberia they have a saying, when in Rome, do as the Romanians do. but yeah, there were Roman legionnaires who this was once part of the Roman Empire, and there was a large number of Roman legionnaires who retired in Romania.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, and that's why the Romanian language is closely related to Italian and Spanish and
Yes,
French.
it is. I always wondered about that.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of an outlier. I mean, it's surrounded by Hungarian and Bulgarian and Greek and a bunch of different Slavic languages, but there it is.
But the Romanian language is a Roman language,
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
just like Spanish and Italian
And Romansh.
and Romansh.
I had a friend who was driving through Switzerland, and he was a linguist who, among other things, spoke Latin fluently.
Okay.
And he was driving through Switzerland, and suddenly he realized that all the traffic signs were in Latin. And then he realized that it wasn't Latin, it was Romansh. Okay, what do you have here? This is from CNN.
Europe agrees on landmark nature and climate deal after tense negotiations.
Yeah, the European Parliament voted in favor of legally binding targets to protect and restore nature in the European Union, despite strong opposition among policymakers. The EU nature law requires countries to introduce measures to restore nature on 20% of their land and sea by 2030.
It sounds like a good idea.
It does, but there was a lot of opposition. It barely
A lot of
passed.
opposition,
Yeah. And part of the problem was some of the countries really don't have all that much of nature left, and they're worried about what this law will do to farmland, because it means some farmland is going to have to be converted back to natural situation. Okay, moving on.
right along.
We have an article from Salon.
And we got a picture of a harvest.
That's right. And Salon, by the way, is S-A-L-O-N, not C-E.
Say that again?
Not C-E-Y-L-O-N. It's S-A-L-O-N.
I didn't hear what you said.
It is not the old name for Sri Lanka. It is Salon, S-A-L-O-N. I was making a very bad joke that was very hard to understand, and I apologize. Okay, so what do you got for a title?
Climate change threatens to cause, and I quote, synchronized harvest failures across the globe.
Yes, this is really distressing.
What are synchronized harvest failures?
Well, let me read the synopsis and then I'll explain it. New research shows scientists underestimated the climate risk to agriculture and global food production. Quote, high impact but deeply uncertain hazards, end quote, were being ignored. But now the threat of, quote, synchronized harvest failures, end quote, has been revealed. What are they? Well, imagine that you have corn being grown in the United States and in Canada and in Europe and in China and in India. And then all of those places but India are suddenly in either an intense drought or a heat wave that will just kill corn. And India is flooding. It means your corn crop is going to fail worldwide.
Yeah.
Those harvests in those countries fail in a manner that is synchronized. It is a synchronized harvest failure. And that means worldwide, no corn crop, at least not enough to feed people. Maybe enough for seed for next year, but not enough to feed people. And that is scary.
So they have been historically harvested at about the same time or one after another about the same time. And that's changing.
That's changing. You know, it used to be that if you had a bad season for corn in the United States, it would be corn in the Midwest. It would not be corn in the Midwest and in the far West and in New England and in Pennsylvania. You know, it would be isolated to one part of the country. And so the corn crop, and it could be any crop. It could be wheat. It could be rice. It could be coffee. You know, anything. So we should move on. We have
alrighty. We got a nice picture of a desert.
You know, I never liked desert pictures. I've never liked movies involving deserts. I've never liked movies with mummies in them. Okay, this is from Clean Technica. What do you have for
that picture doesn't look like the desert. It looks like the ocean.
Well, you know, what's the difference between a desert and the ocean? You can't drink with the water in either place. Although my brother in Liberia used to say that they had a joke there, which was, why should nobody ever starve in the desert?
I'm ready for this one.
Okay, because of all the sandwiches there.
That's pretty corny.
He came back from Liberia with a lot of corny jokes. Okay, this is from Clean Technica. What do you got?
World registered hottest day ever recorded.
Yeah.
What's to come?
So far in July, the record for the world's hottest day has been broken 4 times. That is
4 times already in July. July's only halfway over.
Yeah, and you know, these records go back, I forget how far they go back. You know, some of them go back. This one goes back at least to 1960. It might go back to 1880. I don't know. But the world's hot, it's been broken 4 times. Data from the U.S. National Centers for Environmental Protection shows ASU News interviewed Sandy Carvani, who keeps the world's weather records for the World's Meteorological Organization. Now, if you're interested in that and finding out, you know, for one thing, what is the date that it goes back to, because I've forgotten, you could look that up. This is, what day are we on? We're on Friday, the 14th of July. So you could go to one of the places I suggested and look it up.
I would guess that the world's hottest day is going to happen again.
Oh, yeah. These records are just being broken and broken and broken. And they will be broken probably all summer. And then when the El Nino declines, we'll probably have a year or two with no records being broken, maybe 5 years, maybe 7 years. And then all of a sudden El Nino will come back with climate change having happened in the meantime, and we'll have a bunch more records broken.
We just got to stop burning things that contain carbon.
That's absolutely right. And we've also got to do other things to stop putting things into the environment that warm the weather, warm the climate. Okay, I'm going to put this one up. This is from Clean Technica, and I'll bet you have a title for this too.
I do. Reality check. Natural gas's true climate risk.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
New Rocky Mountain Institute analysis has definitively calculated natural gas's global life cycle emissions and compared those to the global life cycle emissions of coal. A study published in the Science Journal Environmental Research Letters concludes that leaky gas is as damaging to the climate as coal is.
Now that's interesting. You normally don't think of that.
No, but you know, I have mentioned, I don't know how many times, maybe a dozen times on the show, that a number of years ago, kids in Boston at one of the universities drove all of the streets and in a car that had a sensor for leaking methane, and they found that there were I forget the number, but it was well over 2,000 natural gas leaks that they could identify in Boston. And one of the environmental organizations decided that it would duplicate their study just to check it, and they found that the number that they had given, which was well over 2,000, had actually undercounted by several hundred.
Well, one of the things that's happening is when a natural gas well ceases to produce as expected, they just walk away from it.
That's right. We've got 1 million uncapped gas and oil wells in the United States, and that's a serious problem. I mean, when I say 1 million, I'm not just picking a number. You know, I could say a bazillion. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying 1 million. We have over 1 million, according to the, whatever the agency was, EPA maybe. I forget. Okay, we should go on.
The cost of opening a well should include the cost of closing it.
Yeah, it should. And the people who got into fracking and so forth would borrow money and borrow money and borrow money and dig a few wells and discover that they weren't doing what they wanted. And then they'd walk away and get jobs at new companies that would do exactly the same thing, bilking the same people. It's really crazy.
Anyway. By the way, this is one of my pet peeves. They talk about a source, and then you don't mention who the source is. Now, in this case, they talk about RMI, and RMI is the Rocky Mountain Institute.
That's right.
That's an important outfit.
Yes, it is. That's right. That's right. And if you go to the thing in environmental research letters, they're going to have all kinds of sources there, because that's the nature of peer-reviewed papers. Okay, we have an article from the BBC. That is a picture of Phoenix, Arizona, as seen from a mountain called Camelback. And you have a title.
I do. Excessive heat scorches millions across the U.S. Southwest.
Yeah, an unrelenting heat wave is scorching the Southwest, with Arizona projected to see a record stretch of extreme hot weather. Over 115 million people were under some sort of heat warnings, according to the National Weather Service. Phoenix has had 14 days of temperatures hitting at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to tell you,
I've been hearing about that on the local radio.
I looked it up. As we are speaking, the temperature in Phoenix is 117.
117.
117. It is their 19th day in a row with temperatures above 110. And the forecast is that it will stay with highs above 110 for at least 9 more days.
I don't think I've ever seen 110F.
I saw 117 once when I was in Illinois. Now, that wasn't official. That was our house thermometer. But that day did set a record of 117 in East St. Louis, which was a couple of hundred miles or 150 miles, whatever, from where we lived, which was west of Chicago. I have seen that. I remember it distinctly. I asked my mother if she knew what the temperature said, and she said, "Please don't tell me." And then I went to the refrigerator and I got some milk out because I wanted to drink something cold. The milk in the refrigerator was warm. I will recommend to people that they stop climate change and not have 117 degrees days. And by the way, after the temperature goes down below 110 in the highs in Phoenix, it'll be still be above 105.
It's still hot.
For at least a week, and then it's supposed to go above 110 again. Of course, that's a projection that's so far out, we don't know what it means. Okay.
I'm glad I live in Vermont. It ain't hot.
I'll tell you, I couldn't live in Phoenix. I really couldn't.
I certainly wouldn't be very happy about it.
No.
And because of that, air conditioning costs are going up.
Yeah. Well,
we're going to talk about that.
We are. And we are. Okay. Our next picture is a picture of solar panels. And solar panels don't all look alike, but they kind of all look alike. So that's not what I would call an interesting picture. This is from PV Tech. What is interesting about this picture is the name of the solar plant, which is in South Africa. And it looks like Droogfontein. That name has got to be in Afrikaans. And
yes, it's got to be.
which is basically
Dutch.
Dutch that isn't pronounced properly and has weird words in it. Okay.
Municipalities grant biopower approval for a 1 gigawatt solar project in South Africa.
Yeah.
That's a good-sized project.
That's a good-sized project.
And gigawatts is bigawatts, no matter how you look at it.
That's correct. U.S.-based renewable power company Biopower Operations has announced plans to build a 1 gigawatt solar power facility in the South African state of, what is the name of that state? Mpumalanga, I think. I'm just guessing. The company has established a joint venture which would be around $2.5 billion in investment. So,
well, South Africa does get sun, let's face it.
Yeah, and they are developing renewable energy as they can because they've got to get away from coal. They're having a terrible time because they're dependent on coal, and the coal plants that they've got are getting old, and so they're breaking down. And the result of that is they have power outages on a daily basis, some of which will last for hours and hours and hours.
They're in trouble.
They're in trouble, and they know it. Okay, we have a picture of North America, which is seen from outer space. And I did not go to take this picture. That was done by somebody else.
It's interesting. It's green in the east and brown in the west.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. Okay, this is from CNN.
A new outbreak of Canadian wildfires is sending a plume of unhealthy smoke into the U.S. yet again.
You know,
and that includes Brattleboro, by the way.
That does. And I was walking around today, and I was smelling a very faint smell of smoke. And I wonder if that smell was coming from those Canadian wildfires. Anyway, the synopsis for this says, new wildfires in Western Canada, that's a long ways away, are sending unhealthy smoke into the United States again. The smoke is spreading unhealthy air into the northern plains and upper Midwest, including Minnesota, Wisconsin, and upper Michigan, and down to Indiana. Well, okay, this was several days ago. This was on Saturday, July 15th, that this particular article appeared, and today is Thursday, so it's spread farther east.
Well, sometime I look out my window and I see Mount Montasticus.
Yes.
And some days it's pretty well obscured.
Yes, it is. Okay, we have a picture of a Tesla and an article from Clean Technica.
And it says, and I quote, Tesla tells U.S. customers tax credit likely to decline in 2024.
Yeah, very few automakers have EVs on the U.S. market that are eligible for the full $7,500 consumer tax credit. Tesla's order log often goes 6 months, and things do change. The company wants to make sure that people order now if they're expecting to get the full tax credit. Now, according to the article here, the issue here is not whether Tesla is going to change its sources for its batteries, for example, or other things in the car, and as a result of that, have a lower tax credit. The thing that they're concerned about is a change which may be scheduled in the tax code. So this is not something that they think is really very much under their control. So we should move on. It's Sunday coming up.
Sunday, July 16th.
And a picture of Beijing. And every time I think about China, I think about the fact that when I was a kid, China was people in wide conical hats planting rice in paddies. And that's what we knew about China. And the Chinese Navy had 3 destroyers and 400 junks.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. That's right. And part of the reason times have changed is because we have had people in the United States who have been far more interested in protecting the the fossil fuels industry than they are in making sure that America retains its position of being great. Okay, CNN, what do you got for a title?
Let me zoom down so I can read it. Okay.
Well, you're allowed to do that.
John Kerry to step into searing China heat.
Yeah.
Well, as the world's two biggest polluters try to fix fractured ties.
When John Kerry arrives in Beijing, of course, he's already been there and back, to restart climate negotiations, he will step off the plane into one of the hottest summers ever recorded in that city. Since 1951, Beijing has seen 144 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 40 degrees Celsius, on 11 days. Almost half of them have been in the last few weeks.
So you don't think of China as being a hot place, but I guess it's getting there too.
Yeah, China's big like the United States. So, of course, I don't think of the United States as being a hot place, but we've got Florida and Texas and the Death Valley and you name it. But China has places like those too, but they've also got places that are really, really cold. Okay, our next item is we have more pictures of solar panels. And we have an item from The Guardian.
And it says, and I quote, "Up UK energy firms to warn Rishi Sunak, don't back off green agenda." And I'll tell you who Rishi Sunak is.
Yeah.
He's a British politician who has served as Prime Minister of the UK and leader of the Conservative Party since 2022. I never heard of the guy.
I had heard of him before he became Prime Minister, but not very much.
He's an important guy.
He's the Prime Minister of the UK. More than 100. That's more than just a few top energy firms. Of the UK's biggest energy companies will tell Rishi Sunak this week not to back off on the green agenda after an Office for Budget Responsibility report warned of catastrophic effects on the economy of continued reliance on gas. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. But you know, the news that we're having this week is just incredible. It's so bad. Some of it's good, fortunately, and one of the things that I think about and I say, well, maybe the things that I've been worried about, I can stop worrying about quite so much. And this next article, it kind of points to that. Let me put the picture up for this. This is a picture of Austin, Texas. And the article's from the BBC.
Will Texas become too hot for humans? Wow.
Yeah. The EPA is warning that in the coming decades, Texas summers are likely to be, quote, increasingly hot and dry, creating problems for agriculture and possibly human health, end quote. The agency predicts that 70 years from now, Texas will have days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, 3 or 4 times as often as it does now. Now,
that's interesting. That's interesting.
See, the thing is, the politicians in Texas have been backing fossil fuels for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah, they have.
They have tried to shut down the wind and solar power. And now they are baking because of climate change. Texas has never seen weather like they've had in the last couple of weeks before. This is an incredible stretch. It's not just Phoenix. It's Phoenix, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, California, and up the Pacific coast, Oregon and Washington state, but it's also happening in Florida. And these are areas where people have been profoundly against renewable energy, and they say it's liberalism run amok.
Yeah, they've been fighting it.
and they're discovering that climate change is actually happening. So they've got to do something about it. Maybe this is going to mean that things change.
Well, with days above 100 degrees F,
Yeah,
3 or 4 times as often as it does now, people are going to start noticing that.
I think they're noticing already, Tom. That's the reason I say this might be good news, because people are noticing, and we'll have more articles about that.
Well, the Texans have been fighting all these moves toward renewables.
Yeah.
And they have stopped or at least diminished their fighting.
Right. Okay, our next picture is a picture of a monopile.
I thought it was a cigarette.
I thought it was too, to tell you the truth, Tom. I thought that was a filtered cigarette. But look at the trailer that thing is on. Look at the number of tires.
Wow, look at all the wheels underneath it, huh?
Again, I mentioned this last week because we had a different picture of the same kind of thing, a monopile on a big trailer. That trailer has...
Look at that thing. Jesus crow.
Yeah. If there's 2 tires on each axle on each side, that's 128 tires.
Well, let's see what it says about this.
Okay, and by the way, I want to point out the source of that photograph is the New Jersey Governor's Office. All right? And we'll see why in just a moment. This is from NJ Biz.
Well, let me quote.
Yep.
Construction of New Jersey's first offshore wind farm moves a step closer. Well, it's about time.
Yeah, with the backdrop of recently completed state budget process and a sustained push by opponents to slow the process down, Ocean Wind 1, the New Jersey's first offshore wind project, took a major step forward with an approval from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. Now, again, we've got people trying to slow down renewable energy. And some of that, at any rate, is because of financing from fossil fuels interests. But,
yeah,
it's moving along. Okay, we've got our next...
Well, the East Coast is ideal for wind power.
The East Coast is perfect for wind power. We could get an enormous amount of electricity. I remember some time ago...
Well, we can produce more in the East Coast than the whole country uses.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you, Tom. Okay, our next item is from the BBC. I had said last week that we would see another picture of this, and unfortunately, I had the wrong tower. This tower is in San Antonio, and the one we were looking at last week was, I think, in Johannesburg. Anyway, this is from the BBC.
How Texas is racing to thwart the heat.
Yep. Many cities in Texas are taking proactive measures to cool their streets down and protect their people from dangerous heat. I love this story. Their measures range from installing green roofs and walls and painting streets with cool pavement coating to purchasing air conditioning units for vulnerable residents. Now,
by the way, when they say green roofs, they don't mean the color green.
No, they don't. They mean, we talked about this exact kind of technology a couple of weeks ago, and the people who put the article together were saying that we could reduce our energy requirement by, I forget, it was just enormous. And using this technology worldwide, we could reduce climate emissions by more than the United States and China emit annually put together.
Well, they're talking about reflective roofs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the energy gets reflected back into space.
Yep.
This is a good place to put it. Okay, should we go on, Tom, or do you have more about that?
No, we can't dance. Let's move on.
Okay.
What are those funny-looking things?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll put the picture up so people at home can see it, and they can, if they want, they can email us and say, I think I know what those things are. Oh, I see. There's a caption on this. It says Iowa wind farm. Maybe they're wind turbines. This is from
Iowa reaches milestone on wind energy production.
Yeah, this is from Public News Service. Iowa has been a wind energy leader for decades. Now, 64% of the state's energy production comes from wind. That is a new record for the state, the U.S. Energy Information Administration reported. Green energy advocates call it a big step along the road to fossil fuel independence. Tom, do you remember that not that many years ago, people were saying that if we got more than 5% renewable energy on the grid, it would fail?
I don't really remember that, but I'll take your word for it.
I thought that was I certainly remember that they said can't exceed 10%. And then when we got to that, they said can't exceed 20%. Here is 64%.
Well, we don't need to be burning anything to produce all the energy the United States needs.
I'm with you on that one, Tom. There's no question in my mind. We are up to Tuesday, July 18th, and we have a picture of people struggling in a flood in the Indian monsoon season. And I don't know what city that is, so I don't know. That could even be salt water, but I think it's probably fresh. One way or the other, it's not good for the
Looks pretty
vehicles.
wet to me.
Looks pretty wet to me. This is from CNN. What do you have for
Lowering temperatures to record rainfall. Asia is reeling as the climate crisis takes hold.
The world's largest and most populous continent is dealing with deadly effects of extreme summer weather as countries endure blistering heat waves and record monsoon rainfall, with governments warning residents to prepare for more to come. Yeah, I've been seeing headline after headline after headline in which somebody, a politician, a scientist, or whatever, comments on the idea that this is the new normal.
So they're getting extra high temperatures and they're getting record rainfalls.
Yeah, and on top of that, you can have record rainfalls in one part of a country and drought in another. You can have drought leading to record rainfalls. That has happened a couple of times in California. And they call it the near normal. And then all of a sudden, scientists have been saying, I got news for you. This is not the new normal.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got to normal weather yet. We have to have a weather pattern that is secure before, more or less constant before we've got to anything that can be called new normal. And people who think that heat waves and floods and droughts and forest fires and rising seas is normal, I have got news for you. The new normal is change to worse. And that's
the new normal is not going to, it's going to keep, not going to, it's going to put a little bit of, you can't even talk right.
Yeah.
It's going to keep on growing. It's going to keep getting hotter.
It's going to keep getting hotter. It's going to keep flooding more. It's going to keep having bigger droughts. It's going to keep having wildfires. As I said, there are things going on in this week's news that I was not happy about, and this is one of them. Okay,
There's a nice picture coming up of a Bluebird electric school bus.
Yeah, I remember a Bluebird bus at a school that I went to when I was in 8th, 9th, 10th grade. That was
electric school buses make a lot of sense because most of the day they're idle.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're very predictable.
They recharge with the sun.
They're very predictable. You know exactly how many miles that bus is likely to go, 6 weeks from now on Thursday. They're very predictable. You know what they're going to do. Anyway, this is from Clean Technica.
And there's plenty of room for batteries.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me see what it says.
Yeah.
The iconic, nearly 100-year-old bus maker, Bluebird, has been producing electric buses for a few years. Yeah. And now it's introducing a new improved version. You should be saying that.
I should be. You were supposed to read it. I'll tell you what. I'll read the title and then I'll finish the synopsis. How does that sound? The title is Bluebird Electric Bus Gets Better. And after Tom finished that one sentence, the synopsis goes on. The electric bus will have 25% more storage capacity in its battery, rising to 196 kilowatt hours. That means 130 miles of range on a single charge. You know, we don't have to go to 130 miles on a single charge in a school bus. Why would
No, really, they mostly deliver kids locally.
Yeah. So I don't know what would be a reasonable range for a school bus, but I would think that for some buses it would be less than 100 miles. And
as I've said before, and I've just said it here, this is a perfect application
yes,
for an electric bus.
That's right. That is right.
It uses electricity for a few hours in the morning and a few hours at night.
Absolutely.
And the rest of the time it sits there and it can recharge all day long.
That's absolutely right, Tom. You are a man packed with wisdom.
They can recharge from the sun.
They could. That's right. And, you know, they're starting to put solar panels on vehicles now. And look at the top of that bus.
Yeah, if they put them on a roof, it's self-charging sort of.
That's right. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica. And we have a picture of a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is an electric Ford. And it has a grill, even though I think it's probably just for purposes of style.
Just for appearances.
Yeah. Just to remind us that one day in the past, these trucks made a lot of noise, burned a lot of fuel, and were significantly underpowered compared to what they are.
I didn't catch that one, though. It does have a grill, or it looks like it's got one.
It looks like it's got a grill, yeah. But the caption...
I know that Ford has been pushing this truck as very good for contractors.
Yes, and in fact, it's very good for some other things, such as what happens if you have a power outage, because you can use that truck to power your house. It's got plugs in the back to do that.
Well, let me give you the title, which I haven't done yet.
Okay.
Ford F-150 Lightning price drops. Production is increasing to $150,000 per year.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Many EV fans hoped the Ford F-150 Lightning would take the U.S. by storm, at least as much as it could with the production capacity of Ford originally targeted. The electric truck has done quite okay so far. However, it could do better because Ford is dropping the MSRP.
That's the price.
That's the price. That's right. That is right. So, you know.
These manufacturers suggested retail price.
I knew you'd say that. And I couldn't remember because my memory is fading. In the old days, I used to have a good memory. And I remember, because I have a good memory still, searching for a pencil I was holding in my left hand for half an hour. I was 13 years old. Oh, man. I
Moving right along.
Yeah. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, July 19th. And I should...
There's a picture of Houston.
Houston. I knew you'd pronounce that right.
Well, that's how they say it in New York. It's Houston Street.
I think
it is.
Some people in Texas call it Houston too, I think.
Is that so?
That's what I've heard. But of course, most people call it Houston. And yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that the photographer is probably, I don't know, his name is Vlad, which, you know.
Look at all those clouds in between the buildings there, huh?
Wow. I noticed I think I told you, Tom, that I used to live in New Hampshire on a mountaintop. And one
used to live where?
In New Hampshire on a mountaintop.
Yes, you have.
Near a mountaintop, I should say. I wasn't exactly on the top of the mountain. I was maybe 100 feet lower. But we had a very nice view over the Connecticut River, and I can't tell you how many times I looked out my bedroom window and saw clouds whose tops were below me. And some of the other things that I saw were mind-boggling. I mean, I saw a lightning storm over Northfield, Massachusetts, and the top of the cloud was probably not more than 300 or 400 feet higher than I was. And there was so much lightning going on that this whole almost ball-shaped cloud was glowing about every 2 or 3 seconds. But from the top of it, there were blue bolts of lightning reaching upward. And above it, the sky was blue, and the moon was up there, and it looked like that cloud was sending its lightning bolts to search for the moon.
I'll be darned.
Oh, it was, I could go on and on about things that I saw because I was living on the top of a mountain. But, and some of the stuff that I saw was, I had never even heard of anything like it, except recently I came across a woman who had seen the same thing. I was walking home into the rising sun after walking out in semi-dark time in the morning. I was on a wood road, and the wood road had a small spring right under the road. So the road in that particular spot was always wet. And as I walked, the temperature where I was really low. It was very, very low. It was maybe 0. And I came across what looked like a patch of mushrooms with black caps and clear stems. And I couldn't figure out what that was, but when I got up close, I realized the black caps were leaves that had been picked up off the forest floor, and the stems were ice that was freezing as the water came up from the spring. And I have met another person who actually saw that. We should be talking about energy, shouldn't we? Okay, that's Houston, and this is from Yahoo Finance.
From Yahoo, huh?
Yahoo, that's right.
Well, what's interesting is the extreme heat causes the air conditioning to increase.
Yeah.
And that just worsens the situation.
Yeah, what do you got for a title for the article?
Extreme heat drives Texas power demand to yet another record.
Right.
Well, that other record isn't going to last very long.
No, I think it's already been broken. Power demand in Texas is once again setting records for extreme heat as the extreme heat drives homes and businesses to crank up their air conditioning, and the outlook for more searing temperatures means the state's grid will continue to be tested. However, power use has set its 9th record in just 3 weeks, but the power demand is being met. And the reason it's being met is because Texas has got so much wind power and solar power available. And, you know, it's the amount of electricity available has just been going up so fast because solar and wind power can be installed fast, and they've been installed fast. So, you got more on that?
Not much.
Okay. Our next one is we have a picture of a fractured pipe. And this is from...
I guess that's what it looks like.
That's what it is, yeah. And this is one of 2 places in the building where they found fractured pipes. This is one of them. You notice the little measuring thing down below it, and it shows that crack that you can see, the part you can see, is a little bit over an inch long, and it's a little bit over a 1/16 of an inch across at its widest point. This is from CNN. What do you got?
NSB, National Transportation Safety Board.
Okay.
Investigation of Pennsylvania candy factory explosion reveals natural gas was leaking from 2 service lines.
That's right. I don't know why the NTSB is involved in this, but this is who it is. An investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board into an explosion at a Pennsylvania candy factory. I've got to put that up so people can see it. That left 7 people dead in March, revealed that natural gas was leaking from 2 service lines, according to a preliminary report. Now, the thing...
You would have figured somebody noticed that.
Well, you would have thought, because, you know, they put... what is it that they put into the natural gas to make it smell bad? They put an odorant in the natural gas. They put in an odorant, and I have the name in my mind, but I haven't got it.
Mercaptan.
It's ethyl mercaptan. That's right. That's what it is. And that is, it may not be anymore, but when I was a kid, that was listed as the worst smelling substance known to man. And anybody who has smelled, if you turn on the gas in your stove, regardless of whether it's propane or natural gas, if there's no flame, you will smell a kind of a foul smell. It's in extremely small quantities. But the purpose there is to give you a heads up that there's gas of some kind that is not burning. And so they put this into propane or natural gas so people can smell it. And you would think that somebody would have noticed the leak. But
you would have sunk.
Yeah, but that crack is big enough that it could, if it leaked into the building overnight, and the night watchman wasn't particularly ready to deal with, his sense of smell didn't work as well as it could, or, this is a thought, they were making candy. And it might have been that they had a lot of, for example, cinnamon or something else that had a strong scent that kind of.
So the scent of the candy was overpowering.
Could have been
odorant that they put into the gas.
I remember several times when I was a kid riding through Hershey, Pennsylvania, in a car, and as we would travel from Illinois to New Hampshire and back. Summers, sometimes we spent in New Hampshire. I used to love that. But going through Hershey, Pennsylvania, you could smell the chocolate, and I hated it.
That's so.
Hated the smell of the chocolate because it was very bitter. It didn't smell like milk chocolate. It smelled like raw chocolate, and it was unpleasant. That could be in a candy factory. But the point that I want to make on this thing is that's not a very big crack. And the other crack was probably not bigger because they probably put out the I'm just guessing, the photograph of the larger crack so that it was more noticeable. That killed 7 people.
Wow.
That factory blew up and it killed 7 people. And it reminds me of a story that I heard from a friend of mine. He said that when he was a kid, it might have been around 1955, he was driving home from a movie with his parents, and all of a sudden there were cinder blocks falling on the road from the sky. And they found out later that these cinder blocks were falling because of a factory that had blown up a couple hundred yards away. And the only person in the factory was the night watchman, and he had apparently felt ill and lay down on a bench in a locker room, and the factory blew up, and he was uninjured.
When I was a kid, we used to take Route 17 from New York City up into the Catskill Mountains.
Yeah.
And it took us past what is now central Jersey.
Yeah.
And man, was there a terrible smell there. It was all from farms.
Oh yeah, well, and the funny thing about this, and I knew this very well because I was accustomed to farms, both in New Hampshire and Illinois. The smell of the manure in the farms that I was used to in Illinois, in New Hampshire rather, was sweet and rather pleasant. The smell of the manure at farms that used fermented silage was sour and very unpleasant. And, that's just what it was. Anyway,
this smell was coming from where is now one of the most industrial parts of New Jersey.
Okay. And
it was all farmers' fields then.
Yeah. Well, times change, I guess, Tom. Okay, we are up to our last piece. This is from CNN.
It's a picture of the Great Wall of China.
Yeah, that's right. It is China's barrier. And there is some disagreement about whether it was intended to keep the barbarians out or to keep the Chinese in.
Probably a little bit of both.
Probably. What do you have for title?
Z, or She, I guess to pronounce it now.
Yeah.
Says China will follow its own carbon reduction path as U.S. climate envoy Kerry meets top officials in Beijing.
China will follow its own path to cut carbon emissions, leader Xi Jinping vowed as U.S. climate envoy John Kerry called for faster action to confront the climate crisis. China's goals are a carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060.
They can do better goals than that.
Well, they are already doing better goals. They have already hit their goals for a 5-year program that they had scheduled 5 years early, which means they may hit their carbon peak by 2025, and they may actually achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, 2045. I don't know. But in China, I believe the price of electricity from coal and nuclear power and natural gas is getting to be higher than it is from renewables. Another thing too is I just read today, and I believe we'll talk about this next week. The European Union has stockpiled, believe it or not, 40 gigawatts of Chinese solar panels.
Is that so?
Yeah.
The Soviet Union?
No. The European Union.
European Union.
Did I say Soviet? I'm sorry.
No, you may have. I just heard Union.
Yeah, it was the European Union. And they have got these things stockpiled, so they're not going to run out of panels as they're putting up solar power as fast as they can. Now, what that tells me is that the Chinese are going to stop selling solar panels soon. And we have to, they may start using more of their panels as they go ahead. Okay, we are at the end.
Well, China, the European Union is buying a lot of their power from Russia, and they're not happy about that.
Well, they've been replacing it, and the amount that they've been buying is getting lower and lower and lower. Okay, we're at the end of the program, Tom, and we have to say goodbye. So
I guess I'll say goodbye then.
We're wishing all of our people who are watching, all of our friends, to have an unpretentiously brilliant week. How about that? So I'm waving goodbye.
See us now, you hear?
I was going to ask you to say that. Bye, everybody.